All right, Andre, I got to tell you, the biggest truck news of the year is happening just a few months away. And you know what I'm talking about, right?
What is it, the next Nissan Frontier?
Close, but no cigar. We're going to get, after 10 years, almost 11 years, a real competitor to the Raptor. And I'm, of course, talking about the Ram TRX. Ram recently announced that the truck is going to be officially unveiled late summer, and that's not too far away. So what are we going to be talking about in this podcast?
This TFL Talking Trucks?
Yes.
We're going to be talking about the top 10 things that the Ram Rebel TRX must do in order to take the fight to the Ford Raptor and also beat it.
I agree. You mean like prettier colors?
No, not prettier colors. But let's just start from 10 and go down to 1. Thank you for joining TFL Talking Trucks podcast. If you love pickup trucks or big full-size SUVs, if you love trailering, towing, and going off-road, this is the right place to be. Together we can make this podcast the most popular ever.
And then if you guys are big fans of the show, I apologize. We missed a week, and that was because Andre was boating somewhere. Where were you boating?
I went to New Mexico to boat, just on the border with Colorado. I had a great vacation. I'm sorry we were away.
Yes.
But
you were away. I was here.
I was away. We didn't have a podcast, but we're back weekly.
Yep.
And you can get us anywhere where podcasts are distributed, including on Apple, where you can rate us and leave comments.
And, I'm going to leave just waiting just a little bit longer, and that's because you got to drive the brand new Ram 2500 gasser.
Hemi. 8-speed.
To New Mexico, pulling your boat, right? How did it do? How was it as a recreational towing vehicle?
Well, I don't want to give everything away.
Yeah, there's a video, of course.
There's a video coming. I did another kind of a boat trip, which I hope you guys like for video. But the question I was trying to answer was: is a heavy-duty truck too much truck for that vacation, or is it enough?
How much? You have a ski boat, right?
It's a ski boat. It's a 22-foot Taiga ski boat, and it weighs with a trailer about 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's mid-sized truck range, dude.
Yeah, and it's kind of playtime for a big heavy-duty truck.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Tacoma, a Ranger, a Colorado. Yes. Dare I say it, a Ridgeline?
No, you cannot say Ridgeline because they're limited at 5,000 pounds.
That's why I said, dare I say it.
but the Ram heavy-duty truck, it was a Hemi 8-speed. I really wanted to see how it goes. It swallowed up all my stuff, all the camping gear, and, of course, the family, my lovely wife and 2 kids.
Did you bring that crazy cat of yours?
No. The cat was still causing trouble at home.
I know. The cat, brings Andre offerings. It goes out and hunts.
Daily offerings.
Hunts like rodents and birds and brings them home and shows them off. That is a badass cat you got there, Andre.
Yes, his name is Prince.
All right. I think we've stalled enough. So what's number 10? Actually, I'm going to stall just a little bit longer.
Okay.
Just so you guys know, let's define the 2 challengers, right? So almost 10 years ago, Ford rocked the truck world by unveiling and building what is now considered by many the most off-road capable truck, and of course talking about the Raptor.
From the factory.
Yes. Yeah. And basically they took an F-150 and they did 3 things to it that made it unique and made it so popular. First, they changed the look of it, right? So give it big old fender flares and made it look much more off-road worthy. Yeah. Number 2, they improved suspension.
Absolutely.
So they gave it more
travel.
Yeah.
Just springs, shocks. Yeah. It was Fox shocks, actually.
Yes. More of a pre-runner, a Baja pre-runner. Yeah. Not a rock crawler, pre-runner. And number 3 is they gave it more horsepower.
Yes. Well, initially, remember in 2010, they offered it initially with a 5.4-liter V8. And then people said, wait, no. 6.2. Yep. 6.2. And that's the truck we actually purchased in 2014.
And we had that truck, yeah. And that was the magic behind the Raptor. So those 3 things. And since then, it's become a huge success. We've heard from the factory that 1 out of 10 vehicles, 1 out of 10 F-150s are actually built as Raptors. They're the most expensive off-road trucks out there. High-tech truck out there. Now we're in a second generation where they replaced a V8 with a 450 horsepower EcoBoost 3.5 liter. Yeah. And since then, no truck manufacturer, and I'm not just talking about Ram, I'm talking about all you guys out there, and that includes Nissan, that includes Toyota, and that includes Chevy, has come up with a truck that has all 3 of those things until now.
Yes,
think?
well,
so what do we,
upcoming.
Yeah, what do we know about a TRX?
Right.
And before we get to the list, what do we know, and then we'll talk about the stuff on the list.
Well, first of all, we know it's coming because they unveiled officially the sound of it, a little clip with dust flying, so we know it's coming.
And we actually were there when Jim Morrison pulled the covers off
on the concept.
On the concept at the State Fair of Texas and started it up.
Right.
So basically they stuck the ubiquitous, I like that word, Hellcat engine into a pickup truck.
Yes.
And
that was the concept.
That was the concept.
So everybody loved it.
Gave it special styling, bigger shock absorbers,
yes.
And put the Raptor dead in there, bullseye, and went right after it.
And then it was silent for a couple of years.
Yeah, and we were like, "Where is it?" Everybody got all excited. We all were like, "Oh my God, there's a Raptor competitor coming," and nothing.
Right
until now.
So they waited to the generation switch. Right, 2019, the new Ram chassis, the new 1500 trucks came out. They're called the DT generation, and finally now we're getting the prototype. We've seen the prototypes. They're wider, taller, bigger. And it sounds like a beefy V8.
Yeah, they've been running out there. And usually when you see the prototype, the real truck isn't far. And I'm going to give you guys a little, I don't know. Should I tell them about this? Well, I'll tell you because you guys are kind of getting special insider information. I just actually got off the phone with FCA, and I asked for two things because I want to do a video. Me and Andre and Nathan want to do a video, and that is Raptor. Well, no, I don't want to give it away. I'm not going to give it away.
Just be sure, can I just say this, that TFL Truck will be one of the first, if not the first, people to show you the actual truck, the debut, the information, and also driving.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to tease you, but there's a realistic chance that this is not doable, so why put something out there? I always like to underpromise and overperform, and I feel like I'm overpromising and underperforming. Let's just get to the list.
The Olympics now this year and the Olympics.
Let's just get to the list. All right, so number 10, what does a TRX need to do to compete with the Raptor, Andre?
Well, they absolutely, one of the three things you mentioned, suspension.
Hell yeah.
Right, so you have to have a wider stance, not just for looks, but the wider stance allows for more travel, right? The wheel has to go up and down. If you
long arm suspension.
Long arm. And also, if you are in the air, although many manufacturers don't recommend you jumping, you need that extra suspension travel to actually absorb all of the energy of.
And you got the jumper Raptor.
Yeah, I did. I was very fortunate, and you videoed it.
Yeah.
So that's
I got to film you jumping a Raptor. I think you had the better job.
Yeah, I think I had that better job that day.
And let's talk about the kind of suspension that the Raptor has, because it has Fox shocks, but they're not just regular Fox shocks. They're active.
Yes, and this is a big controversy right now. The current second-generation Raptor has a solid rear axle with leaf springs and the independent front end with coil springs. What we think the TRX will do, because the new Ram 1500 has coil springs in the rear, 5-link system, and coils in the front, so solid axle still in the rear and independent in the front. And a lot of off-road guys like that coil suspension in the back because it gives you a little bit more travel. Just it's better. And we think the TRX will have it. And we think also they'll have Bilstein adjustable shocks.
Yeah, so let's talk about active versus adjustable. So there are many shocks where you can turn a lever, flick a switch on the shock that makes it basically soft, medium, and hard, or firm, sporty, and comfy, whatever. You pick your three settings, right? But basically it changes, the stiffness of the shock, how fast it rebounds.
Yeah, the valving inside of it changes.
But Raptor took it beyond that. They partnered with Fox and did something that is very popular in their side-by-sides with Polaris, right?
Yes.
Which is a suspension that actually can adjust on the fly in microseconds, in real time. And let me give you an example of that. When you jump a truck like Andre did the Raptor, what you don't want is a very soft suspension, because when you hit, you'll bottom it out. And when you bottom it out, you will either break the truck or your back, or both.
Or the frame, even.
Or the frame.
Yeah.
But what you do want is that suspension to stiffen up so that when it hits, you get enough cushion to actually absorb that impact, but not so soft that it actually hits the bump stops. And that's what active suspension does. It knows when the truck is in the air, so it knows, for instance, to firm up because there's going to be an impact coming. And the same principle applies when going over holes and ruts and over all kinds of terrain. It softens and loosens and hardens.
And can do it independently.
On each shock in milliseconds to adjust for the kind of ride you want, so that when you're in the truck and you manually set it to comfy, it'll make it actually comfy. And by far, and I've done probably too much off-roading for my own good at this point because my back's pretty hosed up. Remember that Easter Jeep Safari? Oh, you weren't there. You were in New York. There was an Easter Jeep Safari where I basically couldn't walk.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I had to actually stop. I had to sit in the hotel because I couldn't walk because my back was so hosed up. Anyway,
that sucks.
Anyway, the best suspension I've ever been in is a Polaris side-by-side with the Fox, and they don't call it active; they call it live wire in the side-by-side. And when you put it in comfy mode or soft mode, it is so soft. It's like the bumps aren't there.
Yeah, it's like riding on air.
It's like the suspension's just soaking everything up, and that's what you want. I mean, you really don't want to be like bouncing up and down like a Jack in the Box because it's not only not comfortable and not only unpleasant, but it's also not good for the truck
or unsafe.
It doesn't. It unsettles it. If the truck is not well composed, you're not going to go fast.
And also, we talked to Ford engineers when at Raptor Suspension, when we were jumping it. This was back when we actually were talking to Ram engineers. I mean, Ford engineers. They said, this is amazing, guys. Basically, the computer has all the inputs, right? It has the steering angle, the throttle position, the brake position, the speed of the truck, the traction control system. It all takes it into account.
How many Cokes you have in the cup holders?
Yes, how much you're towing if you want to jump with the trailer.
That's a good point. No, it doesn't have the cup holder info, but about everything else.
Yes. So that's amazing. And I think Ram has to match that, at least, right? I mean,
I don't know if they have to. Maybe they don't have to match it, but they certainly have to come up with
at least a way to be as comfortable or as capable.
Yeah, right? They can't come up with. It has to have some kind of suspension that's either piggyback or beyond just a standard OEM shock that let's face it, they stick in every vehicle.
And I think they're going to be there with Bilstein. That's the rumor, at least. We don't have an official.
I mean, when the Colorado Canyon twins came out and they had those Multimatic shocks, which were at that time out of a Formula One car, right? It was really cool,
revolutionary.
Yeah, I look at those shocks and I'm like, those things are going to be worth more than the truck in 10 years. Seriously.
Yes. They're aluminum billet and all that stuff. Let's move on to number 9.
Okay. Is that the pretty color?
No, but it's close.
Right.
Because number 9 on the list is a special interior, right? When you get into a Raptor, right, you got that special steering wheel, you got that red marker on at 12 o'clock, you got those comfortable seats, with bolsters and trim and
you actually
leather.
can get Recaro seats.
Yeah, Recaro seats
which
now.
I think are less comfortable than the regular ones, but I'm a big fat guy, so maybe that's just my thing.
Yes, so we know that Ram knows how to do interiors, right? So they have to do something special to make it stand out.
Yeah, I think in the least there has to be like TRX embroidered
everywhere
into the seats. But it would be nice if they made it very sporty. So if they just
what about like a roll cage? Should they just stick a roll cage in there?
That's maybe one step too far, but in the Red Bull they do a really good job of separating it from the regular 1500.
Red trim.
Right, it's like a red. We had it red and black, and it just looks very not just sporty, but you want to make it because it's going to be a truck that's going to be used in the dirt, right? So you could see almost like them doing some kind of special material, like a neoprene or some kind of a nylon, right? You don't want to have leather seats that
cleanable,
that are going to be pre-running the Baja. It's just not going to be good.
Yeah, those Recaros in Ford may be too nice. Those Alcantara or whatever.
Yeah,
that's too nice.
You think it's one Recaro too far, huh?
Yeah,
they're supposed to also be firmer and more supportive, so that when you're off road. But the problem
going sideways.
The problem to me with those Recaros is that I want what the seat I want is the one that Mitsubishi put into their off-roader. I think it was the Montero 30 years ago. It actually had like a air suspension cushion underneath it, right? Yes. Right, like a
semi-truck with
or a bus. Yeah. That's what I don't want. Recaros that hold me and hug me.
You want to float in there.
Exactly. Once again, old and fat.
So they have to do that. Number 8 on our list is wheels and tires. It's key, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
probably the most important thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about wheels just really briefly before we get to tires. The wheel probably has to have a bead lock option, right? Ford offers a bead lock option, and you got to remember you cannot run the bead outside between that ring and the wheel on the street.
Yeah. So in case you guys are new to off-road trucks, a bead lock is basically normally when you mount a tire to a wheel, you put the tire onto the wheel inside of it, and then there's like a little rubber strip that runs along the side of the tire, so that when you inflate it, it expands and hooks onto the to the wheel. And that is a great way to hold a tire onto the wheel. But if you corner really hard, you can actually have that strip or have it come loose, so that instead of the vehicle rolling, the tire rolls. Mm-hmm. And that's why bead locks are illegal on the road in most places, because before the tire will come off the wheel, you will actually roll the vehicle.
And also, why is it important? Because off-roaders usually air down.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're airing down like we did on a recent Moab trip to about 20 pounds.
You're losing that adhesion.
Yeah. When you air down to about, 20 to 30 pounds, it's okay. Yeah. You don't need the bead lock. If you're going lower to like 5 pounds of pressure, then bead locks are critical.
You'll pop the tire off the wheel.
Yeah, but...
And they're badass.
Yes, and it looks cool.
Yeah, and a bead lock is basically a piece of metal that then...
Like a ring.
Yeah, like a ring that then has screws in it. Actually, not screws, bolts, that bolt the tire to the wheel, that hold it in place very securely.
So they should have that, at least offer it, right, as an option.
Yeah.
And tires, 35s at least. The Raptor has a 35-inch tall tire right now.
I think you should go 37s almost, but manufacturers never go bigger.
It's hard for them because of safety, security, crash worthiness, lane change maneuvers. They have a lot of regulations
and fuel economy.
They have to play with a lot of constraints.
But yeah, at least 35s, and they got to be something. It can't be some soft rotor tire. It's got to be beefy. So we're talking about any of the serious off-roady tires like the KO3s, right? Or even the mud terrains.
BFGs.
Yeah.
Sometimes Drivetrain is a great tire, Goodyear. And there is prototypes are using a tire that I haven't seen before. A certain Goodyear tire. So we'll have to see.
Every manufacturer makes their version, but basically you want an off-road beefy tire.
Either all-terrain or mud terrain, probably.
Yeah. And it would be cool if the pattern was really aggressive. I'm not sure, what kind of pattern you want to be ultimately the best for the kind of conditions that work all around. But from a visual point of view, I think mud terrains are just these big knobbies, right? So all terrains look like traditional tires on steroids. Mud terrains
take it to the next level.
Yeah, it's like imagine a motorcycle knobby tire that's much bigger and fatter. Yeah. So I just like the look of those off-road, but that's a personal thing. That's not necessarily a performance thing.
Next on my list, or our list, is number 7. It's skid plates and protection. So when you're going off-road, and the Raptor has this, you have a front skid plate, you've got kind of steel side steps, which sometimes give you protection, but are not true sliders.
Right.
And then underbelly protection. You gotta protect your fuel tank, your transfer case, your transmission. It's gotta have all of that stuff.
So I was taking our Raptor down Webster Pass a few years ago, and there was a Forerunner in front of me, and he slowed down. I'm like, wonder why he's slowing down. He started crawling, and then when I got to the place where he was at, I figured it out. What happened was much of that shelf road, right now, keep in mind Webster Pass is a shelf road, so it's a road that's kind of built onto the side of a mountain, had washed away. So now the road goes from dirt road, shelf road goes from being maybe like 6 feet wide to being 5 feet wide, right?
Well, not that.
It was pretty tight.
Well, the Raptor is like 7.5 feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And it's a one-way. And looking probably at 1,000-foot drop. No. And so it was this, how scary it was, Andre? It was so scary that I made Tommy get out, because I was like, if I roll this thing, then my wife, at least we'll have one man in her life.
Yes.
And I couldn't see because I had that flop sweat going, where the whole inside of the truck just completely steams up. Yeah. And so what I had to do was I had to put so you got the shelf road, you got the mountain, and you got more mountain and a drop. So I had to put the truck on the side. So now I'm going down the side.
And it's a rock wall, basically.
Yeah, and I'm looking down, at a 2,000 foot.
I cannot believe that.
Yeah, and what happened there was two things were extremely important. First thing was we had KO2s on it at the time, and they've got protection on the side. So the mountain, like a tiger, was raking the side of the tire.
Yeah.
But luckily, because there's protection on it, it
helped.
It wasn't tearing the tire. And those steps that you're talking about were protecting the side because it was raking the side of those steps. Because once again, the truck is now basically
cutting into
the mountainside, and there's jagged rocks that are sticking out and like tearing into the side. So those things are important. There may not be rock sliders, but they do provide some protection.
Yeah, and you have to have that. If you have a serious off-road truck, you got to have steel or maybe aluminum.
Plastic is just silly.
Yeah, plastic will just be cut and ripped off.
And power steps are just going to get broken. so no power steps.
Right. Number 6 is technology, and I'm specifically talking about the technology that helps you off-road, like a crawl mode, different adjustments on the shocks like we talked about, and also like cameras, 360-degree view. Maybe, what about the camera that like looks underneath the truck that helps you see what you're doing?
Andre, I was just off-roading a vehicle that I can't tell you because it's under embargo, and we wouldn't be able to publish this if I said it.
Okay.
But it's a vehicle that Chevy is building. I can say that.
Okay.
And that's coming out relatively soon. But we were off-roading it, and I noticed that it still had what I would consider a potato cam. Now, we use a lot of cameras in this business, and we try to get the highest high-def cameras possible. And at one point, most backup cameras were these 240p, right?
Right. Resolution was off.
Right. This one maybe was 720, and most high def is 1080. 1080?
Yeah.
And then there's 4K. So I don't need 4K, but I don't want a camera where everything is gray, which is what a lot of these cameras do. And how much can one of those little cameras cost them?
But you know what? They buy like 1 million cameras.
So give me something. And people, I said this last time. People said I was a Tesla fanboy, but I'm sorry. Tesla has the best backup camera out of any vehicle I've been in.
It's crystal clear and it helps.
Right? It's like you're like looking into whatever's behind you by turning your head. It's that sharp. It's that in focus. And anytime the colors are washed out, you can't distinguish between like the end of the rock and the beginning of the cliff. That is not a good thing. So I don't need cameras underneath. I just want the cameras that are on the vehicle
to be high definition.
Yeah,
I agree. I remember when we took the Raptor versus Rebel versus Trail Boss in Moab. I was driving the Raptor. Once again, I was pretty fortunate because it had the most kind of technology built into it out of those 3 trucks. And I remember going, cresting this mountain, and you cannot see anything, right? You're looking at the sky, and the front camera was not very great. It kind of makes everything flat. You don't.
It makes it flat, makes it gray.
Yeah,
there's no contrast. It doesn't help you.
So it helps in a way that there's no person there.
It's like off-roading for all you old types, like with an Etch-a-Sketch. That's what are those things called?
Etch-a-Sketch.
Etch-a-Sketch, yeah. It's like that. It's like, there. Oh, okay, there's a cliff there. But how far that cliff is, I don't know. It's there.
So it has to be better than that, and it has to have that. So, and crawl control, so a lot of new trucks are now offering it, but not every truck. The Raptor has it, where you can basically between like 1 and 5 miles an hour in low range 4-wheel drive mode, you can just let off the gas pedal and the brake pedal and just steer, right? The truck just figures it out and goes. And I think the Ram has to offer that. People like that.
Yeah, and I think at this point we can interject something else that's probably not on your list, but I think it's important because we're talking about technology. As far as we know, there's not going to be a hybrid or an electric version of this truck. It's just going to be, a
good old supercharged V8.
Yeah, but when you got companies like Rivian, doing tank turns, and a tank turn basically is, I've got a little truck to demonstrate here, but for those of you who are listening to the podcast, it's just turning on a dime. You can just turn because you've got independent motors that can turn
on each wheel, right?
On each wheel. At some point, the competitor to the TRX may be more of a Rivian than a Raptor. So it would be nice if they thought of that and gave a nod to the fact that electrification is coming, and there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do by taking motors and putting them into hubs or motors that can turn independently of each other, which is something that a traditional gasoline truck can't do.
Well, maybe that's like the next TRX.
It might be the next one, yeah.
But
I thought we should talk about it.
But maybe they should like break one tire, like a dig, like a Land Cruiser had. Maybe they can break one tire and then allow the other tire to rotate and turn tighter. They could do that.
Well, and then the other thing we don't know, of course, is usually Ford does take a year off between new models, and the new F-150 was just announced. There will be a hybrid version of it, a mild hybrid, to say the least, not a lot. I think the biggest is a 1.5 kilowatt-hour battery, which is tiny in electric vehicle terms. But Ford did announce that there will be a new Raptor coming right away, because they know, I think, the TRX is coming. So we'll see. I mean, we're basing what we're saying right now on the current Raptor, but we did a video and a podcast where, they could take the Mustang GT500 V8 and stick it in
a Raptor,
in a Raptor, or the 7.3 out of the Super Duty. I mean, these are things we don't know, and there's not a lot of information coming, except for the fact that Ford said that there will be a new Raptor.
And we still don't have a lot of official information on the TRX, but this is what it must do in order to fight and win. Number 5, I put it in here in the middle of the list. It's towing and payload. It's not as important for an off-road truck to have towing and payload, but as we found out with our first-gen Raptor, we used it to tow across country. So a truck must do everything. That's the thing about that makes the truck beautiful and useful. It must be able to handle weight and tow a trailer. And currently, the Raptor is rated about 8,000 pounds towing and about 1,200 pounds payload, which I think is not enough, but they always tell me the softer the suspension, the less weight you can carry.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to sum it up is you buy a Raptor because it's badass, but you keep a Raptor because it's useful.
Right.
It's a truck.
It's not just to go to the mall, and go shopping.
Which is not a good thing in a Raptor.
No, you go to the Home Depot, you get the
Home Depot is okay, but I remember I did a video that was much hated where we try to take it to Whole Foods, and it's not a good vehicle for Whole Foods. You're much better off.
You can't even park it.
Yeah, you're much better off with our electric smart car. That just feels just much more natural.
Yes. So I think the TRX needs to have at least those specs.
Yeah.
If it has less than 8,000 pounds of towing and less than 1,200 pounds of payload, it's not as useful as it could be.
And, Ford also puts a big gas tank in the Raptor. I think it's a 36 gallon.
Yeah, 36.
Yeah, which
it needs that.
It needs that because once again, if you're towing, you're going to conspicuously drop your fuel economy from, we were getting, in case you're wondering, in that first gen, I drove it for 50,000 miles, and consistently we managed to get about 14 mpg.
And it was much worse towing.
Yeah, right. And it was much worse. It was like down to 8 towing. And so if you're getting 8 miles to the gallon towing, you're going to want at least a 36-gallon tank to not have to stop at every other gas station.
And Ram does this thing where they offer 3 different fuel tanks, like on the Rebel.
Yeah.
And our Rebel had the smallest tank. Yeah. It was no good.
Any fuel tank that starts with the number 2 on a pickup truck just does not makes me grumpy. Makes me very grumpy.
It's like having a small battery in an electric vehicle, right?
Yeah.
You need a lot.
Yeah. How much does it cost them? It's this like very inexpensive piece of plastic that's tucked underneath the truck. There's plenty of room for it, right? It's a solid body truck, so it's not like it's a unibody issue.
Right. I mean, there's a frame. There's a frame there,
and there's a lot of room. So just put a big gas tank in it.
All right. Number 4, you mentioned at the top of the show, style.
It's got a badass.
It has to be badass. I think Ram knows how to do it.
Yeah.
And the prototypes we've seen, there's many different leaks.
Right.
As always, when a new, highly anticipated truck.
The Raptor's got that Coke bottle shape, right? So you want that
big fenders.
You want big flared fenders, which emphasize the off-road worthiness because it's got big tires and big suspension, right? The fenders communicate to the rest of the world this thing is serious under here. And that's for the suspension, and then you got to do the same thing for if rumor is true,
the grill,
the Hellcat engine. You want to show that it's got a serious big old
nostrils and intakes and exhaust ports.
And from a functionality point of view, if you're going to have the Hellcat engine in there, right, you have got this giant supercharger. It just builds up a lot of heat, and you got to dissipate that heat. It's got to come out somewhere, so it's got to have something that's functional. It can't be, sorry, Toyota fanboys.
You cannot have 2 fake hood scoops.
No. You got to have something that says, there's a raging fire burning under this hood, and we got to let it cool off before it melts the hood.
Yes. So, and I think it will have it because we haven't seen it officially, but it should be macho. You talked about colors. I think they should have some loud colors too. Like I'm talking about like neon green, plum, crazy purple, fire orange, you name it. It has to have loud colors.
How about Hellcat?
Blue.
Blue.
Hellcat blue.
B5 blue, right? That's a Dodge
yeah.
color. I think they're going to use a lot of the colors that they use in a lot of their vehicles, just because it's cost effective. At some point, I don't know if we put this on the list, Andre, but it can't be too expensive, right?
It's next.
Look at what a great segue.
Number 3.
All right, what's number 3?
Price.
Competitive.
So
the Raptor is getting up to, well, it starts at what, 54? But
for a short one?
I've never seen a 54.
No. Remember at the event, with the cheapest, the most basic Raptor that they had there, and they had like 20 of them, was like 60.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of them were well above that.
70 or 75.
Yeah, so when you start getting into like, Super Duty, diesel,
dually
territory, and I'm talking about like, King Ranch, not
XL
or XLT. I'm talking like King Ranch pricing on the Raptor. Then you're seriously, and yeah, there are people, and I'm probably one of them, who would probably take out a 10-year loan just to own the thing. but at some point, my wife would not agree with that, because she'd understand that 3 years into it, we're going to be underwater. So yeah, it's got to be affordable.
Yeah, and affordable is a relative term, obviously. So like you said, I think a fully loaded Raptor, if you configured it right now, would be about $76,000. And a fully loaded TRX should be about the same. But if it was $100,000, I don't think. No, that would not be competitive.
But you look at like Hellcat pricing, right? You look at the Trackhawk pricing. I think that FCA has already paid for a lot of the tooling for the Hellcat power plant, the transmission as well. And so, if there's any company that puts a lot of money on the hood of the truck, whether it's initially in the MSRP or eventually when they're doing
discounts
and incentives, then it's that company. So I think realistically, it's got to be a $60,000 truck with a lot of the bells and whistles, right? And it's got to be maybe 70, kind of topping out.
It's going to be hard.
I know it's going to be hard, but I think if you really want to compete, that's the number, especially kind of with what's happening with the economy. Right now we're living in interesting times, as the Chinese say, and that's not a good thing. I don't think there's a lot of liquidity out there, and people are really, struggling to pay rent, let alone pay for $80,000 pickup trucks.
Right. Well, let's hope it improves. Number 2 on the list, and we're almost to the very, very end. The 4-wheel drive system. We assumed, but very specifically, obviously, it's a 4-wheel drive truck. But 2 things. First of all, you're pumping 700 horsepower potentially through it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, right? The Hellcat.
Number 1 is power.
Right.
Okay, but let's combine them.
Right,
so
there you go.
Drive?
So yeah, Hellcat is 717 now. Right. So that's
650 pound-feet of torque.
They just announced a super stock Challenger, which is going to be 810 on pump fuel. So I think Raptor's at what,
450 right
450. Now? I think if FCA is conservative and they want to go 500, they're going to get their
let's say a base model TRX. Okay, 500.
I wouldn't go below 600.
Okay, I agree. But the 4-wheel drive system has to withstand that torque, that power. The transmission obviously has to hold up, but it also has to be a very robust, 4 low, 4 high, multi-mode system, right? Where you can adjust certain parameters on it, and also adjust the traction control system.
Well,
right?
All
that stuff.
So there are 2 kinds of like off-road trucks, right? There are desert runners, pre-runners, which is what the Raptor is, and then there are of course rock crawlers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the old pre-runners, and actually Nissan had one of these, if you remember, the Desert Runner, right?
Yeah.
Or was it the Toyota? I think it was
they still have it. I mean, it's kind of like a 2-wheel drive lifted truck.
Yeah, it was a 2-wheel drive lifted truck because the added weight of the 4-wheel drive system doesn't necessarily help you go fast. So it would be cool if they had some kind of a system where you could allocate power so that it drives like a rear-wheel drive truck. I'd love the ability to do both a 4-wheel kind of a slide into the corner as well as a 2-wheel, if you know what I'm saying, right?
If it can shift power.
If it can do that, and then I would love to see something where there's going to be different modes. I suspect everybody's putting different modes in all their vehicles now because it's just electronics. It's just software. It doesn't cost them anymore.
Right.
Uses the ABS, but it would be cool if it had the ability to have different modes for rock, for desert, for snow,
sand,
all that. And it would be cool if you could actually change the allocation of the power. Now let's talk about things like lockers. What do you think it has to have in terms of lockers? So the Raptor, of course, has an interesting setup, right? It's got a electronic rear locker.
Selectable.
And then the front, it's got this kind of funky...
It's a torsion limited slip.
Yeah.
So it's not selectable, but it is a limited slip system, which helps. So TRX should at least have a rear locker, and you would say.
Yeah, and I don't know of any truck outside of the Power Wagon that has a rear and a front locker.
Well, the ZR2 does.
The ZR2, sorry.
But I mean, we're talking different classes of trucks.
So there's only two trucks that have front lockers: ZR2 and Power Wagon. Right
and
now.
Gladiator.
Gladiator, now three trucks.
It's okay. But
we're going to end this podcast, Andre. My mind is.
It's been a long podcast, but
so three trucks.
But let's forget about the Power Wagon.
Okay, hold on.
Let's forget about the Power Wagon.
Let me dig myself out of this hole and put myself in. There is no full-size truck.
Yes,
that has a front locker.
Correct.
Thank you.
Because right now, if you look at the Silverado Trail Boss, if you look at the Nissan Pro 4X, Tundra, TRD Pro, any of them, they don't have a selectable locker in the front.
And as far as I know, there's only one truck that has a disconnectable sway bar, and that's the Power Wagon.
Yes.
So that's an FCA product. So it would be cool if it had a front locker and a disconnectable sway bar.
Yeah, but we're talking about independent front suspension, possibly. But it must have a locker.
You can still do a disconnectable sway bar.
Yeah, you can. And kind of allow a little bit more travel. Because the thing is, if you're flexing over rocks or terrain, if you can keep your tires on the ground, that's important.
Yeah.
That means you can put power down. That means you can get out of trouble. What do you think in the front? Do you think they'll go with a locker or maybe a limited slip?
I would.
You know what I know? I know. Not having it. Like I recently did the Hummer, my Hummer H2 video in the snow.
Yeah.
And I wished I had a front limited slip.
Yeah.
Or a front locker.
Yeah. I mean, front lockers are good, but they're 90% of the time you don't really need one, right? But when you do need one, you need it.
You probably stuck pretty good,
right?
Yeah,
so it can mean the difference between not being stuck and being stuck. So yeah, it would be cool if it had it. We'll see.
Yes.
We'll see. I think the thing I know is that Ford plays for keeps. And they don't mess around, right? When they went after the Power Wagon with the Tremor, they didn't mess around.
They threw the diesel engine in there.
Right. So FCA was like, well, you can't put a diesel engine. There's not enough room. It's too heavy. It would cost too much. I mean, I know we heard all the excuses, and then Ford just comes out of the box and says, here you go. You want a Tremor? You get both the diesel or the Godzilla. You pick. We don't care.
350, 250, whatever.
Yeah, and I think if FCA doesn't understand that, if Ram doesn't understand that, Ford plays for keeps, they're going to lose the race. So,
but I also know that FCA Hellcats everything.
Yes.
So I think they know, when you go kind of for that halo vehicle,
and there, Andre, is the Achilles heel of the Raptor. Right there, you just put your finger on it, and it's the fact that EcoBoost. Here's the rule. I think. Anytime you have to augment the engine note in the cab of either the truck or the car, you're probably on the wrong side of that argument.
On the loose footing.
You're probably on the argument is, does this truck sound good? And if you're augmenting the sound, and what I mean by that is if you're piping in fake engine note, which is what the Raptor does, into the cabin, then the answer is it does not sound good. Because if it did sound good, you wouldn't have to fake it.
Let it be.
Yeah, and I think there is where the Achilles heel of the Raptor is. It's beyond that, right? Because Ford has decided to triple down on turbochargers, which is fine, but there is no V8 that's available in a Raptor. That doesn't mean there won't be one in the next generation. But right now, and I think a lot of truck guys, given the choice, if everything was equal, right, they would go for the truck with the V8 versus the truck with the turbocharged twin turbo V6.
Just for the sound.
Just for the sound. Just for the the fact that you get two more cylinders.
Just because you can say I got a V8 badass truck behind me.
Yeah, and let's face it. Let's face it. The EcoBoost. This is an old thing, but it can be one of two things, but it can't be both. It can't be fuel efficient and powerful. it can be fuel efficient if you don't get into the turbos, but the second you hit the turbos, it gets thirsty
and it becomes powerful.
Yeah,
but just
so you're not like gaining anything with that twin turbo,
right? But what anything you said, Ford, really takes trucks seriously, right? And all of these manufacturers do. And I think what they should also do is listen to the customer. If there are forums out there who say we want a V8 Raptor, I think Ford is listening. I hope
that's what I'm saying. They play for keeps.
Yeah, I hope they're listening.
Yeah, I mean the lesson there is the power wagon. So right now the Achilles heel of the Raptor is that it's a twin turbo V6, and the reason they could do that is because there was no competition.
Yeah, nobody was competing.
But I mean they have the GT500 engine. They have the 7.3. It would not be a big stretch of the imagination for Ford to stick that into the next generation Raptor. Having said that, they do seem to love the EcoBoost.
And also electrification they're liking. To some extent. Yeah.
So we'll see. You got some more bonuses on your list?
Just one bonus.
All right.
We hit all of them, including power. But one bonus for the TRX to be successful, it has to come this year.
Sooner the better.
That's what I think, because yes, they're launching it this fall.
Yeah.
But if they say, "Oh, we're going to show it to you this fall, but it'll be on sale a year from now," that's no good.
Yeah. So I mean, look, what happened with the Bronco was we were in Detroit. I don't know, what was it, 4 years ago?
4.5
years ago, and they unveiled the Bronco name, and then we sat on our hands and waited for way too long. And FCA, especially Jeep, just cleaned up. Right? They just walked into the casino and grabbed all the chips, and took them for
themselves. Sold the Wrangler.
Yeah, and took it for themselves.
Yeah.
And right now, the rumor is that the Bronco won't be available till April of next year, spring of next year. And so if that's the case with it's not as bad with the TRX, right? The TRX was unveiled on the previous generation truck, so we knew that they were probably going to wait for the new generation. It's probably a good thing because the new generation is so much better. But yeah, it's got to come out now. And when I say now, I mean, it's got to be
like within the 6 months.
Yeah, you got to be able to go to the showroom, sit in it, and drive it off in the next, I would say even in the next, in the fourth quarter at the latest, preferably in the third quarter.
Yes, I would agree. And if it's not the case, then the Raptor still has runway, and the Raptor still will be king.
Yeah, I think so Ford, in the past, what Ford has done was they introduced a new F-150, and then they took a year off, a hiatus for the Raptor.
At least, yes.
And they brought it back. Now, this year they're saying they're not going to do that, but it's asking a lot of Ford to roll out a new F-150.
And a Raptor.
Yeah. It's a lot because it's a lot of engineering, it's a lot of marketing.
And factory has to support it.
Yeah,
right.
It's a lot. So potentially FCA has some runway there, Ram, to have the market to themselves, and have a lot of people who would normally, probably line up for the Raptor, go at least look at the TRX. And I think Ford knows it. I think Ram knows it. And the question is, how long will Ram have the playground to themselves before they have to go compete with a new Raptor?
Yeah, GM guys, we know you're working on something. Go ahead and just get it out there.
GM was supposed to unveil the Hummer, right? The new electric Hummer.
Yeah, like 2 months ago.
Yeah. And once again, they're stuck waiting for something, COVID, I guess.
Yeah.
But at some point, all these manufacturers are going to have to start rolling these things out, or they're just not going to have any new inventory to sell. So I think you can put it off a few months, but I don't know if you can put it off a few years.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there is, Nissan has a new Titan. Might as well just go down the line and finish this off, because in case you guys are fans of Nissan or some of the other brands, we should talk about what they're doing. Nissan has a new Titan. They have the Warrior concept, but I'm not sure that they've got the stomach for it right now. And Nissan is kind of struggling to actually do a Warrior concept, which would be an off-road Raptor
like
fighter.
A Raptor fighter.
Yeah, so I'm not sure they're in the game at this point. I wish they were, but probably not. And Toyota basically, I think, put off the new Tundra until next year. And Toyota's always conservative, but there have been rumors floating out there of a hybrid V8. I've seen, we know that probably the next Tundra is going to be at least a hybrid V6.
Yeah,
but could there be a hybrid V8? Toyota has a V8. I mean, we just had the Lexus here.
Right, with the V8.
With a V8, they're the only ones that still actually, have the cafe numbers, right? Because they build all these hybrids to be able to crank out V8s in their cars. So can they put that in the truck? Hell yeah. And could they hybrid it? Hell yeah. And could they ultrafy it? Yeah.
Well, they have the resources and the engineering prowess and everything to do it as well.
Yeah, so I think Toyota is certainly kind of the dark horse. We don't know where they're going to come in. And who have I forgotten?
Well, GM we mentioned already, and I don't think Honda is doing a Raptor fighter.
No, Honda's probably not in the game.
So there we have it.
At least not in the full-size truck market.
Right.
Well, guys, let us know in the comments below what you think that Bram has to do to basically shellac the Raptor. Is there something that we've missed? And how do you feel about the upcoming TRX? You've seen, well, they just teased the engine note, right? With a big cloud of dust. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of pictures out there floating around right now.
I wish they would show more. Yes. Or just unveil it already. Unveil it.
So if it were your money, what would it take for the TRX to have you go and buy it versus a Raptor if that's in the market? I think we've owned a Raptor. We didn't buy the next generation Raptor just because we're trying to be fair to all the brands
and try to get every
So
brand.
There's certainly a lot of momentum here at the company to get a TRX. We'd love to buy one, but we'll see. I mean, we're like you guys. We want to see what this thing brings to the table before we commit our hard-earned.
If they say the
resources.
TRX has a Pentastar V6, then.
Straight from the Gladiator.
I don't know.
And the Chrysler 300, and the Journey, and the Pacifica.
And the Caravan.
We've got a Pentastar.
Okay, on that note. Should we close
Maybe
it?
they'll put a diesel in it.
3-liter eco-diesel. Okay.
Or a Cummins.
Oh, even better.
How about that, Andre? We're throwing stuff out there.
Cummins power.
Might as well throw the Cummins out there. It'd be too heavy.
Okay.
All right, guys. Once again, thank you for listening. If you're listening, watching. If you're watching, remember, go back to where, Andre?
Well, TFLtruck.com. All the news is right there.
Yeah. We do our videos, we do our podcast, but anything that breaks first appears right at TFL Truck. Andre's all over it, like.
Don't say it. No.
Like V8 snarl on a Hellcat.
Okay.
All right. See you guys next time. Ciao.
We'll see you soon.